Okay, everyone, if I could have your attention, if those of you who are still standing could very quietly find a seat, and if, before we get going, if you could all make certain that your phones are on silent mode. I'm guessing that those of you who aren't reaching for your phones already did that. Okay, so my name is Ben Blaine, and who am I? I write a blog for Shooting People, and I'm also a filmmaker. A while ago, I made a series of short films with my brother and with that man over there. Yes, I can. That's if at any point our voices drop below the level of comprehension, if anyone at the back wants to just gently put your hand up in a kind of like, I can't hear kind of gesture, that would be very useful for us. So yes, once upon a time I made short films. I don't really do that anymore. When I did make short films, I knew everything about where I could get money from for them and out of them and all those sorts of things. And I've realised that since that was when the Film Council existed and before the BFI took over and before Creative England existed, I now haven't got the faintest idea what I would do if I was making a short film. I'm presuming that everyone in this room is making a short film. Let's have a show of hands. Who here is in some way making a short film? Cool, cool. No, if you didn't put your hand up, I'd probably leave. You know. Who would call themselves a director? Interesting. And writers? And producers?
Did you put your hand up 3 times?
Yes.
Jolly good.
I want to control everything as much as I can.
Nice. So, joining me to give you a much clearer view of the landscape of short films, we have Ravi Amaratunga from Channel 4, we have Jordan McGarry from Vimeo, and we have Will Masser from the British Council. So, I think probably we'll start with Ravi. If first off, if all 3 of you could just give us a quick kind of rundown of what, probably why you're here.
Okay. I run short form at Channel 4, which basically means all of the short form content we do for late nights and online comes mainly through me. We've got 2 major kind of televisual outlets. One is called Random Acts, which are kind of 3-minute films that are weeknightly in schedule. That's 260 films a year roughly. And then we also run a short film zone at midnights on Mondays called The Shooting Gallery, which we kind of commission and acquire from. And Vimeo help us out with a bit as well, and everything in between.
Cool. And Jordan?
So I run the curation department at Vimeo. My background is as a curator and then working in production. I used to work for a production company before Vimeo. So yeah, obviously we deal with lots of different types of work. My background, I came sort of through music videos and some branded stuff, and I'm interested in everything. But yeah, particularly excited about short film right now. I think it's a really exciting time. Super keen to know what you guys and this lot will think.
Cool.
Hello everyone, I'm Will Masser. I work at the British Council in the film department, where I cover specifically short film and short film promotion. We have a scheme called the Short Support Scheme, where we fund filmmakers to go to festivals with their work if they get into those festivals, and then they become part of our scheme and we promote their work to programmers, and we curate their films as part of compilations that we tour internationally and program at events that we work on in the 110 different countries where we have an office. I work there part-time, and when I'm not working there I work at Rankin Film Productions on their short film scheme Collaborate, where I work on development of the scripts with the Bureau. So I have kind of 2 hats, I suppose, today. One is from a script perspective, the other is from a script and funding perspective, and the other is from a kind of distribution and exploitation, in inverted commas, hat, given that we don't do anything commercial with those shorts, but we do work as hard as we can to get exposure for filmmakers who have made shorts.
Excellent. Okay, if you guys want to just grab a seat quietly. Will.
Yes.
In your role with the British Council,
yeah.
At what point do people approach you? At what point can you be useful?
Well, because the way it used to work at British Council is you could send us a film at any time and we would need to review it and make a decision as to whether or not we would accept you onto our scheme. We've changed that slightly purely because there are thousands and thousands of shorts coming out of the UK every year, and it's simply impossible for a team to keep on top of reviewing and monitoring them. So we kind of reverse engineered it and set up a list of key festivals. So we have a list of 35 key festivals, and if you are accepted into one of those festivals, you can apply to us at that point to for money to support your travel costs and your accommodation costs at that festival. So those festivals that are all around the world, from Sao Paulo all the way up to festivals in Canada. We cover all the kind of big international A-list festivals: Berlin, Cannes, Venice, etc., and also some of the real powerhouse dedicated shorts film festivals like Oberhausen, Tampere, Uppsala, Aspen in North America, and you can go onto our website and have a look at the list. We also work with a kind of range of partners who we kind of trusted partners in the UK, and that ranges from kind of anyone from Philip, the festival director here, through to DocFest, Edinburgh Film Festival, 1.0 and Lux, organisations like that, who, if they have strong work that they feel might be appropriate for the scheme, they will recommend us to take a look at. We won't necessarily take it on at that point, but we will consider it. So those are the kind of, we really kind of had to set a quality threshold to meet the demand of the quantity of films that were out there. And just to give you an idea of the kind of quantities of UK films that are getting into those festivals, just in the first quarter of this year, 6 are getting into Sundance. I think about 12 have got into Clermont-Ferrand, which is a huge French short film festival. Very good. If you haven't heard of it, you should check it out. And about 12 have got into Rotterdam. We'll give those filmmakers for the European film festivals between £200 and £300 as a contribution to their costs, and people going to Sundance we will give between £700 and £1,000. Sundance is extraordinarily expensive and difficult to find accommodation at. So basically you're approaching us at the point at which your film has been made and has been kind of accepted into one of those festivals. After that point, we do a range of kind of support activities through our short support scheme. So we run networking nights where we try to connect filmmakers to industry. We held the opening night drinks reception for the London Short Film Festival recently and brought over a delegation of programmers from Europe so that the filmmakers could network with them and kind of push their DVDs on them and their business cards on them, etc. And we curate packages. So we did a short film screening recently in Bangladesh. We tour the BAFTA short film program. So basically there are a lot of shorts on our catalogue. We've probably got about 50 to 60 now because it runs on a year-round basis, and that's how many shorts have either been accepted through our trusted partners or got into one of those festivals that I'm talking about, which means they've been accepted onto our scheme. And hopefully that's quite clear. It can be a little bit confusing, but if you go onto the website and onto the short support scheme page, it details quite clearly, hopefully quite clearly, the way in which we work with shorts.
Cool, thank you. And I should say to everyone, if you have a question, perhaps just kind of stick your hand up and I will, well, here we go, look at this in practice.
You said the 56 year was in current moment. When does your year run?
We relaunched the scheme after a long hiatus because British Council went through lots of changes, but we started again in June 2012 was the first festival, CFC Worldwide. Toronto Shorts, which is a great festival, but sadly is actually stopped for a year, well, for financial reasons, was the first festival we supported in the new round of the funding for travel.
June to May.
June to May, yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Cool. So Jordan, similarly, at what point do people bring films to Vimeo?
Well, this is it. I mean, we have all different types of people using the site for lots of different reasons. Traditionally, I guess people would do the traditional, or at least try for the traditional festival circuit, and maybe go to Sundance or one of the bigger festivals, which a lot of them still don't. Some of them are changing, but they insist on having premieres. If your work has been screened online, they won't accept it. That is changing to a certain degree now, just because you can't argue with the fact that you can get so many people watching films online, and that can do a lot for you. So sometimes people upload a film that was in festivals, last year or recently. But increasingly there are people bringing their films straight to us and premiering them online or on Vimeo. And that's something that we're very interested in at the moment, because we've recently announced 2 services. It's called Creator Services, which is helping people monetize their work, because, you know, I'm sure everybody in this room is very familiar with this. You know, you put your work online and people want to see it, and that's brilliant, but everybody needs to figure out how people are going to make money from their films. And so we have 2. We have one that's up and running now. It's called Tip Jar, and that's you know, you put your film online and then you enable Tip Jar on a video, and people who enjoy the film can choose to give you some money, like between $1 and $500. And so that's kind of like crowdfunding, but after the fact, like once you've made your film and put it up there. And then there's another.
Like selling it on the street corner.
Exactly. Well, it's like tipping, you know, like tipping for a busker or tipping in a restaurant or whatever. And that's discretionary, so that's up to the viewer depending on how much they've enjoyed your film. But we're increasingly seeing people sort of have in the description under their video, like, please tip this video, I'm going to use the money to make my next film. It's very early days, but I think it's very exciting. And then the other service, which is in beta at the moment, but we're launching properly probably in the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter of this year, is the pay-to-view platform, which is slightly different, and that's you've made a film. It can be a short film or a feature, or it might be a series, any kind of work, and you want to charge people to watch it. So you set the price, you set the rental period, or whether it's for download, you can set it by region, and you know, people pay to watch your film.
Yeah. So do you guys want to come and like find a space against that wall rather than lurking in the doorway?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting time for Vimeo, just to see how people use this and how people, you know, whether the creators are excited about using it. Most of them so far are, and whether people will, you know, how quickly people will get used to the idea of paying to watch stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, really exciting times.
And the payment, that's all via PayPal, and that's all.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's sort of something that you're finding that internet users are kind of at the point where they're quite happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a really lucky position because the sort of whole thing about Vimeo that people really like is that it's generally pretty quality work, you know, and I think people are beginning to realise, you know, across the internet generally, not just for film, but, you know, you do need to and you should pay for, you know, people's work, particularly when it's, you know, something like this that people obviously work very hard for, and, you know, our community is filmmakers and they understand that, so. Yeah, I think we're at the tipping point where people are recognising that you should pay for good stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Will, who will give you money to take your finished film to festivals, and Jordan with Vimeo, who will enable you to sell your finished film to an existing audience. Ravi, if people want to make a film but don't currently have it in existence, is that where you come in?
It is. I mean, we've got this £2 million fund called the Alpha Fund. And that's a grassroots talent fund, and it's split into 2 parts. One is the traditional commissioning part that goes for all programmes at Channel 4, and we'll kind of commission stuff on spec. And the other is this kind of weird support fund that's a bit like the mafia, and we can kind of, you know, give you mates rates on things, and, you know, we'll sort you out a bit. But what that's
and threaten you if it goes wrong?
Yeah, we'll kill you if it goes wrong. Essentially, the support side of the fund is, say you've run out of money and you're on shoot day 3 and you've got your rushes and you don't know what to do. The Alpha Fund's a great place to kind of top up your funding. If you need funding for post-production and that kind of stuff, we can help you there. And if you can see the kernel of an idea in a film that might have a televisual outlet, that's brilliant and it makes sense for us. But likewise, if you've got a great creative track record and you want to do something new, often if you're not even a traditional filmmaker, so say you're an architect or a fashion filmmaker or a photographer or anything like that, we're totally interested in having that collaborative conversation and starting from something from scratch as well. And budgets range depending on the idea, and that's everything, it's cross genre, so scripted, factual, any of those kind of things. But yeah, I think whilst that sounds brilliant, the other thing to bear in mind is that it has to kind of work for Channel 4 and it has to work for a telly audience. So whilst the film festival audience that Will's involved with and an online audience that Jordan is involved with have their kind of different preferences, so does a telly audience. Can your thing work after One Born Every Minute or Shameless or something like that. So sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. So.
And so, is there a specific thing that you're after, a specific slot that you're filling?
I think, well, yeah. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there are two formal slots. One is this shooting gallery thing, which basically profiles the best short filmmakers from across the world, and we commission some of that. So often it's short factual stuff. And then Random Acts is this kind of anti-TV strand, which is traditionally an art strand. But yeah, kind of acts as this kind of hand grenade in the schedule. It's kind of anti-TV in the kind of absolute way. So those are the formal commissioning things, but everything in between is for the Alpha Fund, and we're looking for stuff that's got a point of difference that we haven't really funded before at all. So if you're kind of involved in creative things out there which aren't really represented on telly, that's exactly what that fund is for. And you know, no one comes with a sheet of paper and we kind of give it a rubber stamp. It's kind of over a kind of couple of months talking through ideas and kind of hatching plans that, you know, we get the best stuff out there for us.
And it will end up on television?
Not always. I mean, sometimes, I mean, we've got to be honest. I mean, some things don't kind of work out, and that's the whole point of experimentation. And you know, you learn from your failures. But the main point is that people move on in their careers and they progress in their kind of creative skill set from being involved in this stuff. And you know, ultimately, getting stuff on air is great because it just gives you another kind of bow in your hat, along with your Vimeo staff pick and your Sundance Film Festival.
Bow in your hat.
Yeah, yeah. Feather in my hat. Bow in my hat. Feather in my bone.
I think bow's on your hat.
Yeah, bow in the hat. Yeah, it's nice.
Try it out.
Cool. So, we wanted to get someone from Creative England along, but no one was free. So I wonder if any of you three can fill me in, because I haven't the faintest idea as to what their approach is, because they're kind of filling the gap that's sort of been left by what was the Film Council, and are kind of the other side of funding, of like official funding for short films that isn't via some kind of TV platform. You look like you might have.
I used to work there, so yeah. They before I was at the British Council and on the Collaborate scheme, I worked at a place called Screen Yorkshire, and then after that a regional screen agency called Northwest Vision and Media, which is now closed down and been subsumed into Creative England. Creative England exists to support filmmakers outside of London. It has funding for talent development, so if you're not London-based, or if you have a business registered or spend a legitimate amount of time outside London at a primary address, you can apply for funding to Creative England. They do talent development schemes. They're not currently funding shorts, though. I believe there are plans afoot to do that, so you need to look out for their website, but they fund feature development. The BFI and Film London are your places to approach in London. BFI last year ran a call for short films, longer length short films at budgets of up to between 25 and 50 grand, and I think they funded about 25 of those. I'm not sure whether they're going to do that again next year. They don't know yet, and they are looking at various models of talent development, including a more holistic approach whereby they target particular filmmakers who they want to develop as part of maybe developing a pilot for a feature film rather than a short film in its own right. So Creative England are there, and they do have ambitions to move back into shorts, but they're not currently doing so at the minute, as I understand it anyway.
Yeah. So in terms of places that people can go to get money for their short films, there's the BFI fund, which could have been or might be a one-off, and was very definitely quite a limited stream of things. There's the Alpha Fund, and the other two options that Film 4 offer. The BBC don't have any kind of.
Not at the moment. I don't know if their BBC Films still fund a couple of shorts.
BBC Films and Film 4 fund shorts, but they're not open access calls.
Yeah.
They work with filmmakers that they're already in conversation with.
Yeah.
Film 4 will generally do maybe one of the 4 shorts they do a year will be with someone they've never worked with before, and that's their risky one. But
yeah, the risky one. Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose, I mean, one of the interesting things is, sadly Phil couldn't make this session, so I don't know the exact numbers, but he was talking earlier about quite how snowed under he was with applications this year, and also quite how astonishingly high the quality was. And so I suppose sort of one question that I have for all three of you really is kind of like, this has been the sort of the landscape. I mean, the arrival of the Alpha Fund is kind of like the biggest kind of light on the horizon that for funding that short filmmakers have had for sort of 2 years. So if no one's funding short films, why are there so many of them, and how come so many of them seem to actually be so good? Perhaps kind of Jordan, from a Vimeo point of view, as a community of creative people,
I think it's really interesting where the barriers to entry have come down, like have come crashing down in the last 10 years, where now it's much more accessible for people to make short films. But I think there are different levels of it. Like, you know, obviously at Vimeo we see all different types of things, and we have a lot of first timers and people who, you know, just made something sort of very personal and uploaded it just to the site, and we see it and we love it, and it gets staff picked, or, you know, goes through the other channels ecosystem. And it's great. Like, I really love it when you see someone like that get picked up and they get signed to a production company, or they start talking to you, you know, or they start entering, you know, making another film that's going to go into a bigger festival, and seeing that progression. But I'm interested, of all of, like, so many of you put your hands up when we talked about, when we asked, are you making a short film? Are you all, like, how many of you are first-time short filmmakers? Okay, so most of you, you know, making, I think that's when it gets interesting. I think once you've made, you know, whatever level you're at, you need to start at a point where you're building up some kind of show reel, some kind of audience. Like for us, we're really excited about Tip Jar and pay to view, but people, you know, we're getting inundated with people saying, oh brilliant, I'm making this short film, I want to put it up on Vimeo and charge people for it. It's like, well, yeah, and, you know, absolutely you can do that and good luck, but you've got to somehow make people aware of you so that people are willing to spend that money, whether it's, you know, maybe they're going to get funding from somebody to make the next film, or talk an audience into giving them the money, or increasingly, you know, have that relationship with brands where they might be able to get funding from somewhere else to make their film. So that's kind of, that's what I'm interested in at the moment, is how to help people do that. And like whatever the angle is, you've got to start somewhere and build up, you know, a following, an audience, and a reputation. And I think that's where maybe keeping the film simpler and starting smaller and getting them up online, and then working towards getting to the big festivals and proper funding, if that makes sense.
I think filmmakers now, much more than say 10 years ago, are kind of Renaissance men in the sense that they can access the festival world, but they've got this ability to make and craft stuff for different kinds of clients, I suppose, in a way. So brands are brilliant in the sense that they've got tons of money, more than I have to spend, but they want a very specific kind of vision for what you can do. And if you can fulfill their brief, but then keep your own project sticking over, and then do kind of more creative things with other different types of people, then you'll find you'll survive much more easily, I think. And I think that's the next stage once you've had your first great short film and it's been picked up and you've built a kind of cult audience. Keeping on making stuff and different types of stuff for different types of people will kind of give you the flexibility to work on your own projects in a way. And then you'll know no one's boss but your own. And I think that's quite refreshing now.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, yeah, the short films funded by brands is probably something we should talk about. You were talking earlier about the Ford one.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are so many, and I think, you know, when I worked at a production company, I was doing exactly this kind of branded content stuff, and a few years ago, I think brands were like, oh, brilliant, the internet, you know, we can make viral films and they'll go crazy and everybody will watch them. And they made some, you know, there were some brilliant films, you know, a long time ago, BMW were the first brand to do it properly, and they made great films. But then a lot of people tried to copy that and made, you know, not very interesting films that didn't do very well. And brands have really learned over the last few years that if you want to do that, then you have to, you know, engage interesting creators and, you know, give them the freedom to do something interesting and make great work. Otherwise, why should people watch it? So I think that's also like an interesting time where, you know, yeah, you have people like the Daniels come to my mind when they've made music videos and little short films that they've made for fun, often starring themselves, and they've built up such an audience there and such a great reputation that now brands are coming to them and being like, you know, we want you to do what you do. We're not going to tell you what to do so much. I
mean, it's not just brands as well. I mean, I spend a lot of my time looking out for stuff. Well, I mean, lots of people come to me, but it's often you're finding stuff yourself. So if you're just doing your thing and you've got a point of difference and you've got something that people like that's really, really, you know, unique, then people will come to you. And it's through platforms like Vimeo, it makes it much easier now. And just even a stamp like a staff pick can make a huge difference to the kind of audience you're reaching. So it kind of works two ways now. People are working just as hard to kind of find you as you are to find them, which is that's something that's changed quite a lot recently as well, I think.
Yeah.
That's what's so exciting about now is if you think a few years ago, to see short films, you would have to go to generally a film festival. There were very few places that you could see this stuff. So there weren't so many short films being made, but also there weren't that many places playing them. And now, you throw a rock in the street, you hit someone who watched a short film this morning. Everybody's watching this stuff all over the place.
So they go outside, someone throws a rock at them.
Stay in and watch telly. Yeah, no, I think it's a really, really exciting time. There's so much happening and so much energy everywhere on both sides. So yeah, very exciting.
But I mean, and in terms of, obviously, I'm springing this on you, so I don't expect you to have exact figures, but like in terms of the tip jar, are you seeing people who are making anything like what you imagine they could have shot the film for?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. We haven't had the it only launched a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
So we haven't even you'll notice that we're going to be much more vocal and sort of promoting it much more as this year rolls on. It's all sort of just been early days. We certainly don't have any official numbers yet, but I did hear that the tips are higher than you would expect. Like you think, it's from $1 to 500, but so that's encouraging. But that's the only thing I've heard officially so far. I think it will probably, realistically, it might take a while for people to learn how to use it properly. It's just like like anything. It's like Twitter or any of these social networks where you have to figure out how to sort of energize and galvanize your audience and inspire them to give you money. And people, I don't know, I'm very interested to know if any of you have used TipJar, whether as a tipper or...
Quick show of hands?
Yeah, has anyone... I think that's the other thing, we've got to educate people in the idea of, if you wanted people to tip your videos, then it's a cultural thing, we've all got to start doing it. So...
has anyone turned TipJar on their Vimeo?
Oh, one in the back.
And did you get any tips?
No, sorry, I meant I wanted to tip other people, not tip myself.
Oh, cool.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, so
and how much did you tip?
That's mean.
You don't have to answer that.
It was kind of a friend who was doing a project, so I tipped £50 thinking.
That's the thing
That could have gone either way.
It's an interesting place for us because Vimeo is like by filmmakers for filmmakers. Yes, please. And that so many of the community, the people who are watching the films, are also filmmakers, and like you can see it in the comments, the questions and the comments that people get under their videos generally are very supportive and very interested in the creative process. So I think it's an audience that's naturally kind of inclined to find this useful and work on both sides.
Yeah, I think audience is something that's kind of worth exploring because, like with the British Council, it feels like you're dealing very much with that high-end festival audience, and that feels like a very different audience to your TV audience. And I wonder, sort of, quite where they, do they meet online or do they not? I mean, how is that? Am I unfair in saying that?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, the British Council's remit as an entire, we are a small department within the arts department, which in turn is within an enormous organisation whose primary remit is to develop relationships between the UK and countries around the world. So our remit within the film department is to take new work to international audiences. And we saw a way to combine two things, which is one, just to get the films in front of programmers and make sure that there's a good representation of UK work. We do this for features as well, by the way. Getting out around the world are the kind of films that really can benefit from a leg up, that aren't studio films, that are low budget British films that need to fight for their place in an audience schedule or what have you. And combining that with the idea, with the fact, I think, that going to a festival as a filmmaker, whether in the UK or abroad, talking about your work, being amongst other filmmakers, doing Q&As, networking is just as vital as the lonely minutes spent crafting your screenplay in your bedroom. It is a part and parcel of the professionalisation of filmmakers to be conversant about their work and to be comfortable in those environments, and that can start with the Short Film Festival. So that's our thinking. So we get to tick our box of getting work out to new audiences, and we get the added bonus of being able to smuggle the filmmakers along with it, which is what we want to do. But yeah, very different audiences, and I would say that we're actually going to tour the Random Acts package internationally through the British Council, which is great. But the Random Acts demographic is and the type of film is very specific, has a specific running length. We promote at the British Council anything from animation through to experimental, through to kind of straight genre work, fiction, documentary. And it's not up to us. If Sundance says if it's good enough for Sundance, it's certainly good enough for us to support the filmmaker to travel to.
Yeah. But I mean, you say because you also support experimental work and animation and a documentary, and so it's kind of like, how would you define? Is there a difference? Am I making up, or is there one that you can define between your experimental work and Will's experimental work?
I think well, good examples. This a filmmaker called Kibwe Tavares, he was an architecture graduate at the time, and he uploaded his graduation film to Vimeo, kind of out of naivety because he didn't know what to do with it. It kind of snowballed overnight, pretty much. It's this fantastic film about the Brixton riots reimagined with animated robots using archive footage. It's as good as it sounds. And off the back of that, we decided to showcase it on Random Acts, and we supported his animation studio, which he just started up with 3 of his mates. And he got talking to Film 4, and he's got a first look deal with them now, and his new short's with Sundance this year, but his previous short that he had uploaded to Vimeo also got retrospectively picked for Sundance. So in a way, if the quality of work is really unique, I keep on hammering this out, but if it's something that's really different that people haven't seen before, it can work for all sorts of different audiences. So I think though the means to entry are kind of, or barrier to entry is quite low, if something's really distinctive, it will always rise to the top. Always.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just agreeing.
Okay. I mean, is that almost in some ways a sort of almost a false promise for a lot of people, because it's kind of like with Vimeo, obviously you can just upload your film. You don't have to be a film. You can be an architectural student. And anyone can enter there. Can take part in this world to an extent. But is there then just this incredible wall of noise? And what can people do to actually step up, to cut above that? Apart from words be really good.
But that's kind of that's it. It's like if it's good, it will float out. And there's 3 of us, 3 curators who look after the Staff Picks channel, and there are loads of other channels on the site that other people externally curate, and we love them all. But we watch stuff all the time, and we watch, obviously we all follow people, and we have people that we're interested in keeping an eye on, but also, I don't know how well you all know Vimeo, but there's the Discover tab, so anything that's getting more than, I think it's 20 or 30 likes in the last few days will bubble up. And yeah, every now and then there is something that we find that, was on the site, that's been on the site for a year, and we've only just come across it. But it's pretty rare. Like, normally things come up pretty quickly, either because people, like I said earlier, people are getting really good at promoting themselves and have got their own social networks and get it out there, and maybe I'll find it on Twitter rather than through the Vimeo thing. But generally, it doesn't matter who you are. Like, we're very conscious of not filling staff picks with people who've already been staff picked once before. Like, we really want to keep it open and accessible, so that someone's on holiday with their kids and making an amazing travel film, or someone does a really nice time lapse. It doesn't have to be a super detailed or elaborate film, but it's open to everyone, and it's not hard for us to do that. And I don't know whether that answers your question, but I feel like it's a pretty level playing at that level.
At that level, yeah. I suppose one question is, well, actually, is your question at the back.
I'm just wondering how many films you go for each day, roughly.
I honestly couldn't tell you. A lot. The office is in New York, so generally I watch stuff in the morning so that I'm done by the time they get in. But most nights I find myself on the computer until stupid o'clock in the evening as well. You can never watch them all. That's the thing, you never watch them all. Yeah, I couldn't tell you. Several hours a day, probably.
I suppose my question is, in terms of staff picks, is there any sort of agenda, creative agenda, that you have beyond, other people seem to like this?
I wouldn't even say it's that. This is, I mean, yes, it's great, and we try and definitely we like to pick work that we think people will like. That's kind of the thing, but it's also stuff that we like, and we see so much stuff. I think the trick is either to just do something really, really well, or like Ravi says, do something that my personal things, I like seeing stuff that I've never seen before, like seeing something totally new, or just a new approach or a new idea or something that feels fresh. That's my personal thing. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do to make yourself stand out is be proactive. I mean, if you've got some amount of money through crowdsourcing, or you've kind of found funding elsewhere, you've been a bit of a magpie as a producer about it, that makes it more attractive of a thing to fund. If you've proven you've got an audience, if you've proven that this is something that hadn't been tested before but, you know, should be invested in. I think it's almost, it's a weird thing, filmmaking, because it's this horrible cross between art and capitalism, isn't it? But if you can traverse it in the right way and shown that you really believe in something creatively, but B, you've got the business thing to back it up, it makes it a really attractive proposition from my end to kind of put some money into it. Whereas if you say this is brilliant because I think it's brilliant, it's kind of a less attractive proposition. Very often I do that.
I think that's the thing though, when you have people, and this is another part of the whole bigger conversation, is you can really see when someone's doing something or has made a film that they genuinely just want to make. Like, my advice to people is always make the thing that you really want to make. Don't try and make something that you think is going to be a smart move for your career, or that you think is going to play really well at film festival. You know, just do the stuff that you're really, really interested in doing, because you can smell that a mile away, and everybody loves it.
Yeah. Ravi, I mean, so in terms of, like, obviously you want people to stand out, but in terms particularly of the Alpha Fund, do you want to talk a bit about the Shooters in the Pub regional tour?
Yeah.
In terms of what the lengths you are going to actually find new talent.
Yeah, so I mean, I think to begin with, the Alpha Fund's about 2 years old now, and to begin with, I mean, we were given this pot of money and no one really knew what we were meant to do with it, and we were kind of seeing what was out there. Now we've got these established platforms, and we're commissioning at least, you know, 30 to 40 short films that we think, short factual films that we think will go on telly, and also some drama projects and everything in between. We're trying to meet as many people as possible now as well, those people outside of that Vimeo world as well, different regional networks. We're essentially a UK broadcaster, and we want to do UK stories. So yeah, Shooting People is a fantastic network. You'll probably all mostly hear through them, and we're doing a regional tour, kind of 4 dates to start with throughout the kind of opening months of 2013. But we're hoping to kind of go about and kind of tell people what the Alpha Fund does, but then just generally have a drink and talk to people and see what your projects are, give you my card, and then hopefully just continue the conversation from there on in, really. I don't know if that's really succinct.
And I mean, that's very succinct. And again, just to kind of just to kind of underline, you know, like, it's always difficult when you're looking for something that's new and amazing, because that's such a nebulous.
I mean, we made this mistake though, where we thought it's a bit like the 5 instructions, right? We kind of created a brief, and then people just tried to fill what we thought we wanted from the brief, and they read too much into the lingo of it. And it's more, if you've got films that you've already made and you've got a great Vimeo page, or you've got you know, projects that you've worked on, and you show them and say, I'm thinking about doing this next, that's a starting point to a conversation. And I think that's the way that most commissions kind of come about, and that's what I'm interested in, talking to people and talking about ideas. And yeah, it's a starting point.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, what you're both saying, I will come to you in a second, what you're both saying is that what you really want is filmmakers who have a personal passion about something and who are already following that passion. And I suppose, I wonder if that kind of relates back to what Phil was saying earlier about how good the quality of short films are, even though no one is, or not many people are actively commissioning them. I wonder if what he's discovering is that commissioners can actually sometimes drag filmmakers down blind alleys.
There's no excuses really, in a sense. I mean, it's possible to access all of the filmmaking equipment and editing software without any money at all through the right kind of funding organisations. So yeah, I mean, in its purest form, I mean, I come with absolute prejudices and preferences and subjectivity, as does everyone else. So if you've got something you really want to make and no one else really knows what it is, then go and make it and show them that it works. Because, you know, I can be a naysayer very often, but people have come back to me and say, well, what do you think of this? And you know, you've got to say, put your hands up and say you were wrong. So I think if you're out there making stuff, it's brilliant. If you post me a link to your showreel and you haven't made anything since 2010, it's a bit, what are you up to then?
It can be hard.
Yeah, just a simple question is, if we send you something directly, would you watch it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I always try to, I mean, this is bad. You call me up on this. I will eventually get back to it. But,
Chasing them.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's actually really true. I mean, if you do send me something and you haven't got a response, just nudge me and I will always try to come back. But yeah, I do try to, I mean, it's be selective in what you send. Don't send everything you've made since you were 8, because you don't know what to watch. Just think something specifically that you think will work for the Alpha Fund.
The one, in my experience, that we're making something, but we're not sure whether we're going the right direction.
Right.
So
Well, I think that's a really important
it's
point,
quite
actually.
nice for people like you to
Yeah.
tell us if this is right or this is wrong.
You should be asking. You should be asking everyone that. Actually, I think that's another way that you can really learn. I mean, ask other filmmakers, ask your mates who don't care about film at all what they think. Because I mean, ultimately, that's a good point for telly. I mean, it's often people who aren't filmmakers who would normally turn their nose up at something like that, but are stopped in their tracks because something is really good or has a really good story or narrative arc or all that kind of stuff. So you should always be asking people, and you know, we'll all open doors, I think, to kind of say, what do you think about this? This is my latest project. And again, that comes out of the relationship in the sense that if I've met you before or I've had a conversation with you, then I've got a sense of what you're about and where you're coming from. So it's a bit more personal rather than here's my CV and here's my showreel, and you know, it's a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. So
that's something I think it's also very, you know, I was talking about the barriers to entry of filmmaking coming down, and also, you know, there are more places to watch them, but the other thing that's happening is that there are many more film festivals and short film festivals, and as much as I'm an internet junkie, I love that whole thing of everybody having a place to get together and the communities that are springing up around short film and other sort of content, and I think it's really important to have that kind of contact with peers or people who are doing the same thing as you, and being able to show people, you know, rough cuts or brushes and see what they think and swap ideas. I think it's super healthy.
Yes, I agree. Will, because you mentioned earlier that you have many hats with all sorts of bows in them.
I love those hats.
In regards to your more commissioning hat, what sort of thing are you looking for?
So, how many people have heard of Collaborate? Okay, good. How many people applied? Okay, a few.
Sorry guys, it's just every time you ask them to raise your hands, could you say how many people it is? Because people won't know when they're listening to this.
That was approximately 15, followed by 10 hands, followed by 6. I think I asked 3 questions. So Collaborate is a short film funding scheme that is primarily designed to develop and unearth new writers. It launched in 2011 at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and in year 1 we had 1,300 scripts, applications. Deadline closed for year 2 at the end of, I can't remember the date, it was about 6 weeks ago now, or maybe a month ago, and we had 1,460 odd scripts. We will make 8 of those films at budgets of £10,000 each. It is being funded and kind of run through the photographer Rankin, who owns Dazed and Confused and The Hunger, which are publications I'm sure you've all heard of. And basically it works as an open access call for scripts. We got 1,460 as I said, and then we have a team of readers, and we kind of do evaluations, and we whittle them down to a long list of about 30. Then that goes down to 12, which we will develop, and then we will finally make 8. And just to I think that there is, just to pick up on I think what Ravi said, there is caution to be had around the commissioning process. You can take the spirit out of a good short film, if you like, by overdeveloping these things. We try to keep the development period quite brief, just to kind of do fine-tuning rather than major development, because part of the fun of shorts and part of their strength is that they are usually boundary pushing, and they aren't confined by the commercial or generic pressures that feature films have. So we're aware of that and we're conscious of that, but we do also believe that given that this is a writer's scheme primarily. A bit of kind of experience for new writers in the development process isn't a bad thing necessarily. We then make a decision about, with the final 8, whether or not the people who have submitted them, if they're writers and directors, can direct their own work, depending on the strength of their show reels. And if it's just a writer that has applied, we then work to pair them up with a good fit director for the scheme, basically. What we're looking for is, I would say, story-driven, for want of a better explanation. We are looking for interesting, original, bold, provocative things, all the things that all the public funding schemes say they're always looking for, although this is a private scheme, but all those things genuinely. Less of the abstract, experimental end of the spectrum. We don't do documentary either, so it's kind of animations and fiction films, live action, that or mixed media that says something different or that stands out and has the potential to really cut through what is a very crowded arena. This year we had a really nice balanced slate. We try and weigh up a number of factors. We want a nice regional spread because it's open to UK and Irish filmmakers. We want a better representation of female filmmakers. We had to. Our shortlist last year was woefully short of female filmmakers, so we're consciously trying to boost that. And also kind of interesting new voices from underrepresented communities, etc. But also a nice generic balance. So this year we had a sci-fi, a horror, a comedy, a drama, an animation, and another couple of dramas, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's what we're looking for, really. They have to be kind of doable on £10,000. They're fully financed, so they have to be quite neat, quite snappy, quite concise ideas, and they have to work as a short film in and of themselves, which is actually extremely rare to find at script stage. I've read about 250 shorts in the last month, and my colleagues who do the development have probably read a similar amount. We then pass them around each other when favourites emerge. We do have a kind of evaluation sheet, which can be a little bit tedious, but we talk, and we talk about projects that are interesting us all the time. If you're interested, every year there seems to be. I used to do, in my old job, I used to executive produce short films through the Digital Short Scheme, which was a nation-run scheme through the UK Film Council. Sadly, that doesn't exist anymore, although it wasn't without its problems. But zeitgeists seem to appear in writing every year. For a start, there's always clowns in everything. There's so many clowns, yes. You wouldn't believe because I think people are frightened by them as children and think that they are a stark visual image. They're not. Get rid of your clowns unless you've got something genuinely boundary pushing to say about clowns, because there's so many clowns. I don't know what to do with them. This year there's been a lot of stories about isolated men turning to schemes and scams to kind of in a kind of recession busting way. That's one of the themes that's come out a lot. There's a lot of mental illness, a lot of old people with Alzheimer's. And what else has come through? I mean, with this many scripts, someone could probably do a PhD on state of the nation through these scripts. But you know, the thing about shorts is they're difficult to develop. They can be a tricksy length. We commission a maximum of 15 pages, which is quite an awkward length to tell a story in, because you can go some way to developing character and introducing a certain type of structure, but then how much time do you have? But I would echo what these guys have said. The scripts that shine through, even if they're rough around the edges, even if they need work, are the ones where the filmmaker has obviously got something really important to get off their chest. And from filmmakers who obviously watch short films in their spare time, go to festivals and are aware of what is derivative and what isn't. If you isolate yourself in your bedroom and do not expose yourself to short films, you'll probably end up writing quite hackneyed stuff, and that's part of the process. But
so that's it. Do you think, because you've just sort of outlined, do you think that these are people watching lots of films and seeing clowns and going, oh, clowns, yes, clowns, short films, or do you think that it's actually people sat at home not watching anything and going, oh, what'll be a short film? A clown, that'll be original. Do you think which way?
I think it's a bit of both. I think people cling to clowns. This has gone in a very strange direction, but people cling to clowns because they're so visual. They're such a
We'll call
happy
it cling to clouds.
Yeah, and they're so emotive. Sad face, happy face. You know, they're such an immediately key intuable kind of visual signifier, and people think. I hate that this sounds skeptical and cynical, but people always think they're original if they tell you they were terrified of clowns when they were a kid. Who wasn't terrified of clowns? Clowns are terrifying. So you get them all the way through. But I think everyone, if you've been to, I mean, you don't see many shorts with clowns in them anymore because there's been so many, and people who know shorts and know that have done their kind of shorts homework know that to an extent. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, council estate dramas are great when they're well done. We have a very rich history of angry social cinema that has its rightful place. But what are you saying that's new about what's your angle, what's your hypothesis, what's your feeling? You know, simply confronting us with stark scenarios isn't good enough, really. When you've got 1,400 scripts, and we're going to develop 12, and then you take into account all the variables that we're interested in, seeing a representational regional spread, etc., and looking to balance genres. There will be some great scripts. There'll be some gems that won't get through, and it'll be heartbreaking towards the end. But at that top layer, they have to be absolutely excellent, or they have to have at their heart something really, really special and different. And I'm sure you've all got special and different ideas. You have to believe that in order to have the conviction to be a filmmaker in the first place. But it's very competitive, and it's very difficult.
If you're waiting for that sort of special thing to reach out of these things, why do you place so much importance on having a genre spread? Is genre that important?
No, it's not. It's not that important. But what we tend to find is that by the time we've distilled our shortlist down to 30, just by kind of the random nature of things, is that we do have a diversity of styles and approaches, and I think, you know, ultimately we're developing a package of films at the end of the day, and we don't want 8 dramas, because we're going to program the films probably to an audience, and a variety from an audience perspective is good. So no, we won't cram in, if there's no good horrors, we won't cram in a horror that isn't good enough. But it is nice to have a diversity of a diverse slate, and also with any slate you're taking risks in certain areas, and you're trying to explore certain voices in certain different modes and genres. So that's our thinking. But no, we're not hard and fast. But it's nice if it works out that way. It's not set in stone.
One question for everyone: put your hand up if you've got a short film about a clown.
I just made it within the last week. It's a short animation.
Yeah.
It's only about 50 seconds long.
No, I'm sure it's excellent.
And
I feel bad now.
honesty.
I feel bad now.
It's about my 20th film,
Yeah.
and so I finally got round to a short animation.
Clowns is one example. There's loads of other examples. There's films in which one of the characters is a ghost, and you don't realise to the end. Loads and loads. Happens all the time. Sixth Sense. What's the other? Imaginary Friends. Loads and loads of films about imaginary friends and puppets and ventriloquists and that kind of stuff. I don't know why necessarily. Freaky stuff from childhood. And I think, you know, you're often told as an adage, write what you know. And if you're a new writer, you haven't lived very long. And so you draw on childhood a lot. And those are the kind of terrifying, cinematic, shadows at night kind of things that come out to bite.
For what it's worth, mine is about a clown dating agency. So
that's quite, see, that good. An original take. There you go.
I suppose one other area in the whole short film thing that I always find interesting is the leap from shorts to features. So pretty much everyone put their hand up here when I asked if you were making a short film. So let's have another show of hands for everyone who would like to make a feature film. See, now that's interesting, because although a lot of people put their hands up, for instance, you didn't put your hand up. Do you not want to make a feature film?
I'm not a filmmaker.
I
should have left at the
yeah.
start. I'll tell you what I do. We are a Facebook VOD platform, so we let independent producers sell their film on Facebook, similar to what you do on Vimeo. And I'm here to learn about monetizing shorts.
Interesting. Okay, I will phrase that another way. Is there anyone who considers themselves purely a short filmmaker and sees that as an end in itself? The clowns.
Well, I mean, I've had things that I have written optioned to be feature films, but other people can make those as long as they pay me. You know, I don't care. The short films I do because I like them.
Yeah.
I enjoy it, and even the clown one was for fun. You know, I enjoyed doing it myself.
No, it's yeah.
Yeah.
You're killing me here. And it's nice to hear that you just want to make shorts. I think that's great.
No,
Yeah.
I like shorts. You
Yeah.
see, I mean, you know, I'm of the generation, I guess, that developed the 3-minute attention span.
Yeah.
You know, so I like short films,
Yeah.
especially. I don't like short films that go on too long.
Yeah,
I get
me
bored.
neither. It's very much a UK cultural thing to think of the short as a calling card and as a stepping stone to the feature film.
Yeah.
You don't find that nearly as much in Europe.
You have a question.
It's more like we were asking that. For instance, I like making shorts because you can take risks. I mean, even the artist enjoys it because it's challenging. My question is, where are we going with it? I mean, I remember in the past, Channel 4 used to show shorts like around 8 o'clock. I mean, why they don't do that anymore? I think if they start showing shorts around 8 or 9.
It's a very sad answer to that, and unfortunately we're funded by our lads, so we have to stay alive in the current economic climate. So unfortunately, all of that experimental stuff is pushed out to the fringes where advertisers care less. But I think we can be even more experimental in those areas now than, the stuff that you'd get at 8. You still find that, back in the 80s even, you'd find that those would come from a very select group of filmmakers. Whereas now, I think literally, you can have graduates or even kind of school kids who have 16-year-old kids who've made films that have gone out on Channel 4 now. So I think, yes, it's not going to get the eyeballs that you would have had, back when there were 4 television channels, but the world's moved on and kind of economic climate's moved on. But I think that's exciting in its own end.
Do you mind if I just ask a question off the back of that?
Yeah.
Back in the mid-90s, Michael Quaid said that Channel 4 is the home of animation, and that was at a time when you were also getting your money from your ads. But that was a time when animations, short films are being shown in really good places in the schedule, 11 o'clock, perhaps, and also sort of earlier on in the evening. What's the difference?
Well, then there were 4 television channels, and now there are about 100. And so, there are kind of specific places you can go for that kind of stuff, and obviously there are on-demand things as well now, and online platforms. So, the whole landscape has changed.
Publicly owned as well. Do you not have a responsibility for cultural assets?
I think we all. I think we all do. But we're non-profit, but we're self-funded. So I suppose you should be asking the BBC that question.
But you are also publicly owned. With the founding manifesto.
We are, but I think you've got to understand that we've got to balance this commerciality and our ability to experiment. And we do. We're the only platform on television that shows animation at the moment. Name another. We're the only place that champions new animation. And I know it's difficult, and I know it's not quite as kind of glamorous as it might have been then, but we've got to take the rough with the smooth. And we're fighting a good fight, but it's difficult. And it's difficult for any animator now to find a platform. So I know it's not the answer, and we're trying to do more, but it's better to do a little than nothing. I think.
You had a question.
My question was about the length of shorts, because there's a huge difference between like a Wasp and Arnold type short and a 5-minute short. And I was wondering how all of you feel about the sort of 20-minute short form or the 15-minute short form, or if you prefer the kind of under 10 minutes.
Depends on the idea, doesn't it? If you've got a story that should be 20 minutes, you shouldn't try to make it 3 minutes long. And likewise, if you've got an idea that essentially could sit within 5 minutes, don't try to make it 20 minutes long. And also know the kind of audience, I guess, who might be wanting to watch it. Because if you're sat in a cinema, might quite like a 18, 20-minute film. If you're at a festival, you're kind of in that mindset. Whereas if you're kind of switching between channels.
Yeah.
But I suppose kind of if you answer with your kind of film 4 hat on, rather than kind of like your personal taste, it's kind of like does a 20-minute idea present you with problems in terms of giving it funding and going, oh look, we could put it here, we could, it may be on at midnight, but there's a 20-minute slot at midnight, or is there not?
Well, for telly it's different.
Yeah.
I'll just say, 20-minute films will have to have an ad break normally in between, and I hate putting ad breaks in between shorts. So instantly it would have to be something absolutely mind-blowing, Oscar-winning, to kind of justify having a whole part dedicated to it. So, but that might not work for me, but it can work for someone else. So I think it's dependent on the idea. I don't know what you guys think.
I absolutely agree with you. And as you said, if it's a 5-minute film, then let it be a 5-minute film. Don't try and stretch it into, because you feel like you've got to have a half hour. I also think, whatever you're making, it is worth, if you've got your heart set on going to festivals, it's worth thinking about, checking the eligibility and what the maximum lengths that they accept are. But I don't know. For me, online, I think it's a very different audience, where people generally, at the moment, most of them are at their desks or at a computer that they're doing something else, and they're having a bit of a skive and checking something for a while. Like, and if something's 20 minutes long, it's a bit harder for them to watch it. So we tend to, like, if we're staff picking something and it's a longer form short, we will put it at the end of the day or on a weekend where people tend to have a bit more time. But I think that, again, that will change as people watching more television online and watching more the internet on their TVs, and everything's blurring. So again, that's another thing I'm really interested to see what happens in the next few years.
Yeah. Following on from that, within the Alpha Strand, is there sort of any kind of space for things like Play for Today and things which are kind of half-hour one-offs and that sort
Yeah,
of
absolutely. We've funded stuff that we almost know isn't going to go on telly, but it will push that project forward. It just depends whether it works under that full banner. And I think
push that project forward in what way?
As in, sometimes we'll fund a project just because it's a good thing to do.
Right. And so then on the back of that, the people you funded can go and say...
Yeah, because it's about developing a relationship, and often it's in good faith. It's like, we know this isn't probably going to make it onto the shooting gallery, but we think you're doing good work, and come back in a year and let's see where you're at, and here's a bit of cash to help make that happen. But they're often already got bits of cash in place, so we're one of several people they're asking for, rather than please give me all of your money to make this thing I want to do. Yeah. But yeah, no, absolutely. But again, it comes out of the conversation. Depends what the idea is. Talk those things through. But if you think there's something that's missing that we're not doing,
I'm curious. Personally, I'm hopeless online. If I'm watching something online, I have no patience, and it needs to be quite quick. Whereas at the weekend watching short films, I would never watch them online, but I enjoy them out of that context. And I'm just wondering how much that's a factor in terms of commissioning and distribution.
Channel 4 has a scheme called Coming Up, by the way, as well, which does half-hour length stuff. It's for broadcast though, isn't it? It's a good
broadcast, and they do lots of workshops. Yeah. I mean, Bath, someone in this room done Coming Up? No.
He has.
Right. And how did you find that?
I was down onto I went on the week long.
Right.
Yeah, it was really good.
I think
lots of good stuff came out.
This is for writers, correct?
It's basically for writers and directors. So they'll split it into two. A writer will submit their script and then be paired up with a director. Not too dissimilar from what you do in collaborating.
Yeah, I don't know whether this might be wrong, but I believe that the spirit of Coming Up is to move directors towards television drama more than it is filmmaking. Not that filmmakers don't cross over between the two all the time, which they do, but the work sometimes reflects that. The way the scheme is run, I think each director has the same crew, and they have a very tight turnaround, and they try and kind of make it rigorous, like on a TV shoot almost. And then the films have a televisual quality, and I don't mean that disparagingly, but they're not often as to use a purist. They're not very cinematic, but they're perfectly convincing pieces of drama.
I think that television is absolutely television drama is the realm of the writer, really. Yeah. Whereas cinematic kind of stuff is much more director and auteur led. I mean, as a general rule, it's not always the case, but
yeah, no. You had a question.
Well, it's kind of related to that one, really. That obviously there are ways of looking at these things. You might make a film that appears that big, or whatever. But I guess my thought is, do you think festivals? And this goes for length as well, because obviously things can get longer online, whereas you are kind of, or used to be limited far more in festivals. But do you think festivals are busy trying to keep up with, and I'm showing my prejudice here because I don't have much patience when I'm online, it's just the way I am when I'm watching stuff, that's all. So I wonder, do you think that there's a certain pressure on festival organisers to show work kind of in a similar sort of manner?
No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like festivals probably. We had a Vimeo festival in New York last year, and actually we flipped it around. Most festivals say they won't accept work that's been online. We were like, well, we won't accept work that's premiered anywhere but online. So you have to have shown it online first. I think a lot of festivals trying to get people to go to a cinema or go to an event and watch, and certainly for paying for tickets, they feel like they need to show work that people haven't already seen, and they feel like the internet interferes with that. But for me, I think it's really special going to watch a film with other people or watch a selection of films with other people and see it on the big screen and hear the audience responding around you. And then you've got all the social sort of aspects of like hanging out with the peers and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't think they're like, I think we need both. I really, really firmly believe that we need both.
I totally agree with you. I guess my so I'm maybe not being that clear, but maybe it's just more the selection process for festivals, perhaps trying to imitate a sort of an online sort of.
What do you think they should, or do you think they are?
I'm asking if they perhaps are because they're pressurised to do so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. No.
I
I
mean,
mean, to take LSFF as an example, I know that Phil always has a selection of long short films. I know that's one of the things that he's particularly passionate about, and he does programs that do contain sort of 4 films, and it's sort of 2.5 hours. It's kind of and I think that actually, if anything, the only pressure is that you get so many good films that if it's the same as you were saying. It's kind of like if you've got a 20-minute film and you want to show as many as possible, that 20 minutes has to be so much better. Yeah. Whereas if your film is 5 minutes, a good 5-minute film can slip nicely into a program much more easily than.
But there's just to go back to our festival, which was a really nice kind of exercise for us, where we're so used to putting stuff into the Staff Picks channel and hoping that people are going to watch stuff online, where people can be very, you've all said your attention span can be very, just challenged. There's other stuff going on around you. If a film's a bit of a slow burner and maybe it's 10 minutes long, the first 2 minutes like nothing much really happens, but then like wait till you get to 3 or 4 minutes in, that's difficult online because you can lose people. And I guess it's the same on TV. But when you've got a captive audience who are sitting there and they're just waiting to be entertained for an hour or so, that's a really nice place to be in, because they're probably not going to leave the room, and you can really show them something that maybe they would switch off or not concentrate on elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's what's so great about festivals.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that was one of the things that I was sort of interested in sort of talking about people who want to make feature films and the impact that kind of an ever-increasing role of online watching and viewing of short films has in the way in which you learn to tell stories, and whether that has an impact, which we're probably too soon to kind of really judge if that.
I don't know, I think it's happened. I feel really encouraged by how much of a thing this, I've always loved short film, I'm sure most of you guys have too, but it feels undeniable that there's more of them around and more energy in the scene, and increasingly so. So I feel quite confident that we can, as a community, as a sort of culture thing, get people interested in the idea. I think that if the work is good enough, people will watch it, and it's about packaging. There's so much stuff on the internet, and there's so many festivals that the good work will rise to the top, and people, the more of it there is, the more people will be interested in it, and hopefully it will keep going.
Yes.
What would you say people's goals are when it comes to monetising shorts? Because it's previously been difficult to monetise shorts and sell them. Is that because the channels weren't available? Is it because people don't just want to pay for it? And what are people's goals? Does everyone, as a non-filmmaker, does everyone in the room make a short with the expectation that they won't make any money off it, and it's just to showcase their work for a feature? I mean, what are people's thoughts and goals around that? What are their expectations?
That's a very good question.
That's more of a question for the room.
Find the next short.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Let's. I mean, who makes a short film hoping to make a profit? Hands up. For the record,
there was a hand. There was one hand.
One hand. Who makes a short film and hopes not to make a loss?
A few more hands.
That's verging to what, like a third of the room almost. And who willingly looks on a short film as a tax write-off? Or just a
that's why you're in it for the long haul.
Good work. And who just thinks that, and who does it for as cheap as possible and just goes, that's money I'm never going to see again. Yeah, so that's.
You're going to use it as a calling card, or if you think that it's for a competition, or you're doing it for a purpose to get your profile higher, something. Yes, I think it's different.
Yeah.
But if you can change this, we'll be happy to.
Well, no, I certainly would, and then, like equally with Vimeo, like anyone that wants to speak to me, I'll be in the pub. So.
Oh, you have a question?
That was going to be my next question. Regarding, is there any sort of initiative or group of people that actually help with the business side of short films? For instance, I'm more of a creative. I know the business side of short films, but not as much.
The business side of short films.
So
There's
so how to make get the money and how to make some kind of money off it.
Right.
Yeah, there are short film distributors, there are short film sales agents. There's Dazzle Films, there's Shorts International. Shorts International have a relationship with iTunes and maintain strongly. There was an interesting case where iTunes, whoever was doing the web, made a mistake, and for half a day, the short films were up where the feature films were meant to be, and vice versa. And loads of people watched them. The revenue spiked out of the park, but still not enough to justify a business case for the short films to be where the feature films are. So they went back again. But the evidence demonstrates that yes, there is a market for those short films. If you look at a lot of the short films on iTunes, they tend to be the massive festival prize winners, the Sundance, the Oscars, the BAFTAs, and they tend to have named casts because that's how you drive the click through. If Michael Fassbender's in it, or what have you, but
like Snatch or something with the
Man on a Motorcycle. Yeah, exactly. Or he was in Pitch Black Heist, which was that filmmaker's next film. It also won the BAFTA for Best Short Film. That film will be on iTunes without doubt. And in terms of, I don't know about people, like you're talking kind of like a short film monetization strategist, and I don't know if that role exists.
Because I've actually met probably about 230 short film directors, producers, and some sort. And out of them, I'm pretty sure about 190 have told me they've made a profit.
Really?
So out of 230 that I've met.
How much did they shoot their films?
Because they were good stuff. So I was quite proud.
Well, there you go.
So for the fact that they could come back to me and tell me, they made money out of it, is something that got me thinking.
And there are places like Distrify as well, where you can. Distrify is quite interesting because you can build an audit. You can put your film online. You can set up a paywall. You can show a bit. If people want to see more, they pay more, and you can track where people have watched your film. So if, for example, your film has gone down particularly well in Denmark, you then know with your next film that you've got an audience of potentially interested people in Denmark, and that is an interesting way the internet can work for you. So there are places, but I don't know about specific people apart from sales agents in these bigger organisations that work to monetize shorts specifically.
I think this is going to be something that we like in the next. I was going to say 5 years, but probably even a couple of years. It's going to be really interesting and see how this works. Again, I think it's it's like with everything, like the news media, or like publishing. Getting people into the idea of paying for something that in recent years they've had for free, whether it's content online or whether it's film or newspapers or whatever. But I honestly think it will happen, and I think that this is only going to move in one direction for all the reasons that we've talked about so far. The community is incredibly strong. There's lots of energy in the scene, and the work is good. People are getting used to the idea of paying for stuff online. Going back to brands, they're getting more interested in helping people make good work. I feel really, I am an optimist, but I do feel really optimistic about where things are and where things are going. So yeah, exciting times.
You had a question first.
So, given that the British Council is kind of tasked with liaising with other countries and Channel 4 is the kind of hub is there a preference for films which illustrate the British way of life or shine a light on British things as well?
For me, absolutely, and probably for you, not so much.
Yes, yes, and no. We love films that give an interesting insight into contemporary Britain. But you know, a good film, if it's setting out to do that, should do that. But we're not looking for that exclusively. So we tour something like Faisal Balifa's latest short, The Curse, is set in Morocco, and is a foreign language film essentially. And it's a fantastic film made by a British filmmaker. So we will tour that alongside anything. What we tend to do sometimes is package up things, like we had a touring package called I'm British But ... which was named after the Gurinder Chadha short, and it was like interesting looks at Britain from a sexual, racial, economic perspective. What have you? We like, you know, British Council is a contemporary organisation and wants to reflect Britain in all its facets, basically. But we don't exclusively tour work that reflects an element of Britain.
And you had a question.
Ravi, you talked about giving money to projects, maybe not funding them in total, but partly. Is that recoupable or is that a gift?
I wouldn't say it was a gift. Nothing in life is a gift. There are always things to come. We call it. I mean, this is the support side of the fund I was telling you about. Again, it's called a production grant, and it's something where you agree upon the deliverables. So recently, we funded a surf film, which is going to end up on Channel 4, strangely enough, but we didn't think it would, so we said, can you package, he was a graphic designer, so can you package 25 DVDs and we can hand those out to our board? That seems like a fair deal. So, and that helps you with your project. So it's kind of, you know, as long as there's an output that's helping creativity, and that's the whole point of the fund, and we can say that we're doing that, then yeah. But it has to be good still.
You don't need the money back.
But we don't need the money in monetary terms.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, it's not quite a silly question, but how much importance, when you look at criteria and you're watching short films, do you put on cast? Because obviously with short films, there's a hell of a lot of budget restrictions, so on and so forth. So to get a decent cast is very hard, just because of who's willing to do certain things for their money. So when you're watching a film, do you sometimes watch a film and go, I really like the film, but I don't like his face, or little things like that? Does that often affect, or do you go, no, I'm watching the film, not this actor's portrayal of that character? Which, I know it's really...
No, I get what you're saying.
But how much does the cast of a short film, which is obviously going to be on lots of constraints, affect your opinion of the film as an idea and as a piece?
If you have a good actor in a bad film, it's still a bad film. I would say, to flip your question, a lot of people sometimes ask, do I need someone famous in my film to get into a good festival? And no, absolutely not. In fact, sometimes a famous name can kind of destroy the fragility of a particular project. If you reveal suddenly that it's Daniel Craig, and then, you know, as your monster, that's, oh, fucking hell, James Bond, you know, and then the film, you know, so it's quite a delicate thing. I mean, I think a lot, with regards to budget, I think there's actually a hell of a lot of goodwill towards the short filmmaking community from profile cast. You see them popping up in films all the time. But I've seen films, you know, short films with Charles Dance and John Hurt, and real pedigree UK actors in them. Some of them more successful than others. But I don't ever sit there and think, I hate your face. Oh, actually, sometimes I do. Sometimes we all do. We all have actors we loathe and ones we love, I guess. But it doesn't make much difference to me. The importance of getting good actors is crucial, and key big name cast are often seasoned actors. So that, I suppose, that's the point.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Sometimes, and it is difficult with narrative short film, that sometimes you can see someone's really stretched and they haven't maybe had the rehearsal time, or they haven't quite got the cast that they wanted, not because you don't like their face, but just because you notice that their acting's there's something about it that's a bit clunky or whatever, and that's a shame. But yeah, no, I've never thought I don't like someone's face.
No point having a big actor, especially if you can't direct the way you direct around them as well. So you can often tell if a kind of big name's disrupted the kind of balance of the cast as a whole as well, and how many shots are kind of focused on them instead of. So it can actually be a negative thing, I think, in the the way that film was put together.
Just to add to that, actors in particular, we are the envy of the world in terms of the quality of our actor training in the UK. So even just going a layer below those famous faces, there are hundreds of superb character actors. Happy to work on interesting projects that you can trace. Like I saw there's a great short in the festival called Morning by Kathy Brady, and Johnny Harris is in it. He's an absolutely fantastic actor, and he's probably not getting as much work as he should do, considering how good he is. And there are people like Eddie Marzan, who before he was doing shorts and stuff, and they were always at that level. So I think there's no excuse for having a bad actor in your short, really. And I think if your script's good enough, it should be able to attract someone decent. It's getting past the agents that's the.
It's also being able to recognise who is decent. Cause in terms of a decent cast, it's kind of like that doesn't have to be anyone who anyone recognises. It just has to be someone who's perfect for that role, and equally if it's someone who even an unknown who is not right for the role, it's terrible. And I've watched films and I've gone, I'm loving everything about this apart from him because he can't act, and that's yes.
I was just asking a question to Jordan about the internet and festivals, because they do collide. Problem.
Yes.
So when you have a short film that's finished, and you want to you do the festival circuit, but you cannot promote it online at all. That's the problem. So basically, you have to delay that for 1 or 2 years because you can sell to the festival circuit for 2 years maximum of film that's just been done.
Yes.
And then afterwards, you can. So you're delaying everything 2 years later.
Yeah,
there's nothing that can be done at the moment. Like most festivals, none of them want them. The big ones, the Sundance.
Yeah, no,
ones, they don't really want them.
Some of them are changing. Some of them are changing, but it is a choice that you have to make. It's like, do you want
not the big ones,
to
not
go?
The ones that are
No. And I think
it's a choice that you have.
Yeah, it's a choice that you make. Like, do you want to go for that?
Those are the ones that really help you.
But I think you have. But that's the thing, is that's the choice that as a filmmaker you make. Is very clearly kind of like Sundance take a certain breed of film, and that if you're making this sort of thing, I might have a chance to do that. And obviously, if that's the direction you're heading in, then leaving your film offline.
Depends what kind of film you're making. Like we said, some films, if it's a short, and you think it's going to do very well online, hundreds of thousands, up to millions of people can see it quite quickly, like just after you've finished making it. Or do you wait for 2 years so that a couple of festivals with maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people in each screening can see it, and you hope that they're industry people? Well, my personal view is, I love film festivals for all the reasons I've already said, but if the industry people are worth their salt, they're watching what's happening online as well. Ravi watches everything online, commissioners, and the industry is watching the internet. So do you wait and you try and do the tour so that you can get the laurel from Sundance or whatever, which I absolutely understand if that's your choice, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to go first online if you believe that your film will do, if it's internet friendly, and I think increasingly a lot of them are. So, but I work for Vimeo, I'm biased.
But I think the crossover between the two, there aren't that many films that you go kind of like, well, that's going to win Sundance, and that's also going to get 1 million hits within the first week of being online. They are quite different for reasons that we've talked about. It's kind of, so.
I think festivals actually one of the. I used to work with directors who made short films, and we used to have this conversation a lot. Festivals can be great because it's the deadline that you have to finish this film, because so many short films, it's personal projects, and you can fiddle around with them forever. Months go by, a year goes by, and you're still tweaking it. And I'm just going to maybe fix that and change the sound or whatever. It's like finish it and enter it into the festival by this point, and it's really good motivation. But I think things are maybe. I expect to see more festivals maybe changing some of those rules. I absolutely understand that they want to have exclusives and premieres and that kind of stuff, but it's really hard. If you've made a film, you want people to see it. To have to sit on it for a year or two. It's really hard. Yeah.
Very competitive.
But that's it's down to the filmmaker.
Regarding the Alpha Fund and the British Council, how much do you focus your kind of funds on, like not necessarily shorts, but like sort of preemptive projects which are leading to features? So like maybe like the first 10 minutes of what would be a feature and stuff like that. I don't know if you focus on that at all, or is it solely?
Again, it depends on the idea, but I mean, if you look at Tyrannosaur that Paddy Considine did recently, that was based on a short that he did a kind of 4 years earlier, that would turn out to be the opening scene for his film. So things can just turn out that way, but we're always funding them because they're a great project. If that so happens, that's fantastic and brilliant, that you can turn that world into a feature, brilliant. But you're focusing on the short, I'm focusing on the short form projects at hand. To know that that's your ambition is great. But
British Council doesn't do production at all in any sense, but BFI and Creative England, I know the BFI do if they're working with a particular filmmaker in development, and they think that the next stage in the development of that project is to do some tests and see if certain scenes are working. They do fund pilots as part of the development process, and I believe Creative England do that as well. I'm not certain.
Sometimes, I mean, often it's hard on the budgets that we have. I mean, we go up to about 10-15 grand per project, and often it's quite hard to make drama work well for that. And then we also have coming up and Film 4 as well. So we tend to naturally go towards factual at that stage. I mean, if you've started shooting or you're kind of later down the line in production, then that's when we tend to come on dramas. That said, we do read all scripts that come in, and if there's something that's quite unique and we think will work and we haven't done it, we'll take a look at it, or we'll pass it on to drama or whoever.
Cool. Any other? Oh yes, definitely. Another question.
Just a quick question about actually budgeting for funding, because I know budgets mean different things to different people. As a DOP, I realise you can cut costs and achieve certain things, like cutting costs and with different budgets. But at the same time, it's kind of finding the balance between when you're actually applying for a certain amount of money. Say there would seem to be up to 5,000, up to 3,000. Where you kind of pitch yourself at, because you don't want to come across as this unrealistic or unreasonable. Kind of give the false impression that you might not be able to So wondering what your thought process are when you kind of proceed an application and how to budget for the funds.
I guess if someone's applied for a documentary which is about a football fan from Derby, and it's over the course of a day and they've asked for £20,000, you're kind of like, well, the idea doesn't fit the budget bucket. But if it's a huge ambitious idea that you want to take a punt on, of course it will need that budget. I mean, it's probably worth working with a producer who's made quite a lot of stuff before, and often quite older producers will want to work with new talent in that way, and production companies as well. So it's worth, I mean, again, it's this thing about asking other people about what they think. Just ask, even if you're not having a formal relationship, ask an experienced producer what they think you should be going in for in a project like that. But it depends on the idea, again.
Cool. Okay. Blimey. Okay. Yes, red shirt.
Sorry if this has been covered, but is there like a formal application stream for the advertising?
No, we specifically did it so it would be anti-bureaucratic. It's an email, you send your idea in it or a link, and then we meet up and we talk about it. So there is no application, there is no 19 hoops to jump through.
So writers just as likely to get accepted as directors?
Yeah. But I mean, because of the budget length, it's the people who are that DIY bracket who are uploading to Vimeo and can do everything themselves and can work within tiny budgets who tend to get more stuff away. Things like coming up and the stuff that Film 4 do are more writer focused because they can pair you up with the right production partners for all that.
And there was a question there. Yes. That was you. Yeah.
Despite there being obvious support for short films in the UK, it still seems very easy for a lot of people to click to another website or change the channel, or maybe not even attend the festival. But I'm wondering if Channel 4 or the council considered taking short films back to before feature films in the cinema as a way of sort of just showcasing emerging talent for people that.
It's
really
not in our hands.
Yeah.
The cinemas, and they need the ad space. It costs a fortune.
Yeah.
Those spaces cost a fortune. Sadly, it's a cultural shift. I mean, it's bigger than the film industry. The reasons why that stuff doesn't happen.
Film 4 do that before. Try to do that before their summer screenings at Somerset House. But again, it's only in very bespoke areas or within festivals and that kind of thing that can happen.
Because when you get, sorry to draw this out, but when you get those orange adverts, like the producer and the director, and the amount of people that sort of, that you can hear them rolling their eyes. But would it not be an idea for maybe Channel Channel 4 or someone to team up with someone like Orange and say, you've obviously got this time here, would you consider filling it with...
It's been done. Virgin Media Shorts do it already.
Yeah.
The 12 winners go on cinema screens around the country through the Picture House chains. Yeah. And it's because they can afford to buy the ad space. And Channel 4 certainly, I don't think would be able to buy it.
No, we're not in the same.
British Council is a registered charity. There's, it's an enormously commercial problem.
He had a question.
I was just going to respond to that by saying exactly what you said about.
Fine, your go.
I should do that one. You mentioned earlier your hand grenade, and what was that aimed at predominantly? Was that the audience's notion of the short film?
Well,
or
I think everyone's kind of used to seeing formulaic kind of narrative devices in television, Jeopardy, Journey, all this kind of stuff, and really it's just to excite viewers visually. It's only 3 minutes random acts. They're not often got a narrative arc. They're just something that's beautiful to look at or mesmerising, and it's just there and it's gone before you know what's happened. And it's just meant to be this weird wake-up call before you go to bed, and that's the whole point of it. Just to show that as a channel we're still supporting that kind of stuff, just when you're not expecting it. So that's the theory behind it. It doesn't always have that effect, but
doesn't always go off.
Yeah, exactly. It gets me done sometimes. But, no, that's the theory behind it. That's the hand grenade thing. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, maybe your hand grenade sounds a little bit more dangerous than maybe it is.
It's often like me, actually. Well, sometimes we have had. There've been some pretty horrific things that we've put out, to be honest, that have had quite a lot of complaints in Daily Mail articles.
But do they create sort of internal? Do you thrive on that? Are they sort of kind of things that you kind of need to, I don't know, keep programming, or are they kind of, I don't know?
They've got no commercial point to them at all. They're there just merely to say, apart from this brand awareness of Channel 4 is still putting kind of weird things out there.
Okay.
And often Twitter is just, what the fuck is this? Where's Desperate Housewives? But often it's like, that was really cool, that was mental, and that's the point. They're quite divisive.
Cool. The one other area that I wanted to cover was crowdfunding, but I don't think we've got time. So I think just before we go to the pub, I wonder if each of you could say what makes you most hopeful about short films. Will?
Oh no, don't start with me. I was just about to think of something clever, but I can't.
Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, Ravi, go.
In fact, this room's massively full. I mean, we could have had 5 people here and loads of empty chairs. I think there's obviously a massive appetite, and people are continuing to make stuff, so that's great. It's fantastic, and we should be working with each other to try and make more stuff happen.
Yeah, seconded. I think the fact that this room is so busy, and just as a general health for the rest of the industry, the fact that there's I always think that people making short films are trying to do other stuff, and the fact that at the grassroots the short film industry is doing so well, creatively certainly, it's very exciting for what that means for the rest of the industry.
I've got it. I went to the low budget Mayhem screening at this festival, and Philip programmed about 70 films, and they were all little nuggets they were all little nasty, rascally little nuggets of joy, and they were all rough around the edges, and there was just a wealth of talent there, and that's hopeful. And who needs the funding really to take those first steps?
Who needs to pay bills?
Yeah. No,
Marvellous. I would like to remind you that the pub in question is
the ICA bar.
simple. We're basically there already. I'd urge you all to join up to Shooting People if you haven't already. I definitely urge you to read my blog, and most of all, I'd urge you to download my film from iTunes. It's called Hello Panda. Thank you. You've all been wonderful. Please give our panel a round of applause.